Minister Zarif, thank you very much for talking with us.
Good to be with you again.
Let's start with the downing yesterday by the United States of the Iranian drone in the Strait of Hormuz. President Trump says that this was just the latest in a series of provocative and hostile acts by Iran. Is that how you see it?
Well, first of all, to the best of our information, we didn't lose any drones yesterday. So it doesn't look like that they shot one of our drones. Maybe they shot one of their drones. The reports that they shot probably somebody else's drones. But provocative, even if it were our drone, we are in our own neighborhood. The U.S. naval vessel is about 6,000 miles away from its shores. So I would ask you, who's being provocative?
Are the U.S. and Iran inevitably headed, given what's been happening in the last few months, towards some kind of military confrontation?
Nothing is inevitable. We human beings make history. And I think human beings, if prudence prevails, can prevent war, because in any military confrontation, everybody loses. That's the job that leaders, diplomats have to perform. And we are trying to do our best. It requires prudence, it requires foresight, it requires not being childish.
The Trump administration official line is that the U.S. is not looking for war with Iran. Do you believe that?
No, we didn't come to the Gulf of Mexico. They came to the Persian Gulf. Now they have to watch that they should not undermine our sovereignty, our territorial integrity, or our security. And then we won't have a war.
So what is it going to take? I mean, right now you have the U.S. imposing what they say are maximum pressure sanctions on Iran. You are saying what you're just saying now about your territorial integrity, about the U.S. coming into your region. What is it going to take to get to diplomacy?
Well, President Trump has said publicly that he is engaged in economic war with Iran. I just want to define what economic war is. Economic war is a war when you target ordinary citizens. In a military war, you target military personnel. Sometimes citizens, civilians become collateral targets. There's a collateral damage on civilians. But in an economic war, you cannot target military. You cannot target the leadership. You're targeting ordinary men and women in the street who want to buy cancer medicine, who want to buy MS medicine, kids who need cure for their EB problems. These are the targets of economic war. I would call it economic terrorism, pure and simple, because it aims to put pressure on people in order to achieve political objectives.
My question is, how do you come together, though, given the U.S. position, given Iran's position? You've been saying this week, Mr. Minister, that if the U.S., that Iran may be prepared to change the course of your uranium enrichment.
No, we're not. We're not. We have an agreement that we negotiated with the United States. It doesn't matter which government of the United States, because the outside world considers the government sitting in Washington representing the United States. And last I heard, we did not have a revolution in 2016 in the United States. We just had an election, a government that replaces the previous government through electoral process, inherits their obligations. We have an agreement. What I have suggested is that if President Trump is serious about going to Congress, because he has said, whatever I will do, I will ratify it in the Congress. If he's serious about going to the Senate and to the House to ratify something, there is a provision in the current agreement that is in 2023, we're supposed to ratify the additional protocol which requires us to put all our facilities under UN inspections for life. He said he was concerned about the length, the sunset. That would be for life, not even 100 years. That would be permanent. And it would also require the United States to lift its sanctions by Congress permanently. That is a provision that we already negotiated. He wants to do better. He can implement that provision right now, and rest assured that Iran will never produce nuclear weapons. If that is his objective, he can do it now.
So, but there's no indication right now that President Trump will do that.
Because the motto is, what's mine is mine, what's yours is negotiable. That won't work.
But my point is, there's no indication right now that President Trump is inclined to do that, unless you have information that we don't have now.
You see, I'm not interested in what he is inclined to do. I'm interested in what the United States must do as a responsible player in the international scene. I'm sure President Trump wants to leave a legacy of a law-abiding country, not a country that breaks treaties.
Would Iran be prepared in order to move Mr. Trump to do what you're describing? Would it be prepared to accelerate the date that you ratify this agreement with the IAEA, the International Atomic Energy Agency, that sets up serious inspections in Iran? This is a date that's coming, the so-called transition date?
2023. We are prepared to bring that forward. We need to go to our parliament. Our parliament needs to ratify it, but we are prepared to take it to the parliament immediately, provided that the United States does what it was supposed to do in 2023. Take the sanctions to Congress for them to lift the sanctions permanently. That is the agreement we already have. We could bring it forward so that President Trump could make history by making sure that the relations between the two countries would change forever.
And are there some Republican members of the United States Senate who you've either been in touch with or who you think would be willing to push what you're describing? And there are reports that you may be meeting this week with Senator Rand Paul.
Well, I meet with members of Congress when I'm here, not as emissaries of the government, but as representatives of people. I do not comment about who I meet or what we discuss, but I do meet with members of Congress.
Are there conversations going on with members of the Senate, behind the scenes or in public, that could move, you think, could move the Trump administration to do what you want?
Well, I certainly talk to think tanks, to members of Congress, and I share with them ideas about how we can get out of this stalemate. And they share with me their ideas about how to get out of this stalemate. And we do that for a purpose, to get out of the stalemate. We don't do it just to exercise our freedom of speech.
Mr. Minister, even Americans who believe with you that the Trump administration was wrong to withdraw from the 2015 agreement, ask, why is Iran enriching uranium beyond the caps? Why does Iran need to do this?
We don't need to do that. We have a provision in the agreement that if one side does not fulfill its obligations, the other side may, within the agreement, reduce its commitments. Now, in the long term, we need 4.5% enriched uranium in order to fuel our nuclear power plant. We don't need it immediately. That's why we accepted to delay that. But we will need it sooner or later. If the United States and if the Europeans don't fulfill their obligations, then we have a right. That's a remedy. Because, you know, the nuclear deal was not based on trust. The nuclear deal was based on total mistrust. We did not trust the other side. The other side did not trust us. Let's be fair.
That may all be, but the political reality is, and are you not concerned that by enriching beyond the caps, you are simply emboldening people like the National Security Advisor, John Bolton, other hardliners in the Trump administration who don't want to see any sort of agreement with Iran?
Well, as a democracy, you can understand that first and foremost, we are responsible and accountable to our own people. And our own people expect us to do something in response to US violations and to European failures. That's how a democracy operates. You respond to the demands, to the wishes of your populace, of your electorate.
But you also recognize the political implications of what you're doing on the U.S.
Well, the political implications are that if you do not abide by your treaty obligations, you cannot expect others to do the same, because you cannot implement a multilateral treaty unilaterally. One side cannot simply benefit from the positive outcomes of implementation of a treaty without being prepared to do their part of the bargain.
As we sit here today, in the middle of July 2019, what are the American people to believe about the prospects for any sort of easing of tensions with Iran?
Well, I think that that can be within reach, provided that we accept what we agreed to. That's all it takes. All it takes is to recognize the fact that nobody will buy the same horse twice. You won't buy the same horse twice, I won't buy the same horse twice. If we just agree that other people have similar concerns, similar public opinion as you do, then it is possible to reach an outcome out of this stalemate.
But the American people look at Iran, they hear President Trump saying this is the world's greatest threat right now, your country. They hear that you are enriching uranium, you're on the way to nuclear weapons. Why should they relax? Why should they not be worried?
Had we wanted to build a nuclear weapon, we would have built it during the time that we paid for it. From 2005 till 2013, we actually paid many times in international isolation, in international pressure, in sanctions, in UN Security Council resolutions. Probably nobody received that type of pain. Had we wanted to build nuclear weapons, we would have built it then. We can build nuclear weapons, but we do not want to build nuclear weapons. We've made it very clear, we've made it public. We have ideological commitments not to use nuclear weapons. We have strategic considerations that nuclear weapons don't augment our security. So that's our position. But if he says we are the greatest threat to the United States and to international peace, just ask him who is bombing Yemen, who is imprisoning the Prime Minister of Lebanon, who is aiding Daesh, who is aiding the Taliban, who is creating havoc in Libya. We're not in Libya. We're not in the Sudan. These are U.S. allies. It's not Iran. So if you want to look for malign behavior, if you want to look for a threat, you look at Saudi Arabia. You look at the people who butcher a journalist, not at Iran.
You mentioned Yemen. Clearly that terrible war has been going on for years. The Saudis are involved. The Houthi rebels have a connection clearly with Iran. We now know that the UAE, the United Arab Emirates, are withdrawing most of their forces. Could this be a moment for some sort of breakthrough there?
Well, we've had many moments to end the war in Yemen, starting with 4 years ago in April 2015, which we could have ended the war in Yemen. Saudis, unfortunately, and you can check even with American officials, Saudis unfortunately believed that they could win this war militarily within weeks. If you just check even news footage, you'll see them, you'll hear them saying that. Now, we could have ended it 4 years ago. We can end it now. It just takes one cognitive transformation. This war cannot be won militarily.
Are you prepared to meet with UAE leaders either in Tehran or somewhere else?
Anytime.
Is such a meeting being discussed right now? We know you've had meetings with UAE officials in the past.
I mean, we have diplomatic relations with the UAE, so we're prepared to meet them. We're prepared to meet the Saudis. We will be having 80,000 Iranians in Saudi Arabia these days performing Hajj, probably half of them performing the annual pilgrimage. Probably half of them are already in Saudi Arabia. So we have no reason to engage in a conflict with Saudi Arabia. They're our neighbors. We have the same religion, the same history, the same geography. So we can meet any time. It just requires an acceptance of the reality that we all need to provide our own security regionally, and we cannot purchase security from outside.
And what does that mean practically?
Practically means that we need to work together rather than work against each other.
And could this be a moment for that to happen?
It can, and I certainly pray for it.
Is there some tangible evidence that
Not yet. Not with Saudi Arabia. Unfortunately, I do not see a readiness on the part of Saudis to start thinking about how a regional mechanism rather than an extra-regional mechanism could give them security.
But you are prepared to talk to UAE and to
Saudi Arabia. We are prepared to talk to all our neighbors. I've said it publicly that we are prepared to sign non-aggression pacts with all our neighbors. Every neighbor of Iran will be invited to sign non-aggression pacts with Iran.
But you're saying as of this moment, there's no movement, tangible movement in that direction?
Because unfortunately, they see that the United States even supports them literally with murder. They can get away with murder and still get the support of the United States. And we all saw that, how it happened.
You just said that Iran is prepared to sign a non-aggression agreement statement. At the same time, we know that Iran is still working with a number of armed, non-state groups, militias across the region. Why is this continuing? Why does Iran need to work with these groups that are creating violence in so many countries?
Actually, we work with groups that are defending themselves. It's the United States allies who are working with groups that promote violence. We never worked with Al-Qaeda. We never worked with ISIS. We never worked with Jabhat al-Nusra. We never worked with people who are beheading or burning alive individuals. We work with people, support people, as everybody should, who are defending their territorial integrity, who are fighting occupation, who are fighting foreign aggression. That we do, and we do it proudly.
And you work with Hezbollah and other
groups? Yes, Hezbollah is a group that has representatives in the Lebanese parliament. We were not the ones who imprisoned the Lebanese prime minister. Others imprisoned him, and Hezbollah made sure that Lebanon would stay calm and quiet while Saudi Arabia was questioning and interrogating the prime minister of another state.
Is Iran prepared in any way to reassure the United States, the rest of the world, that it is not going to continue to support groups like Hezbollah, which are seen as destabilizing?
No, we are very transparent. We will not support anybody who's destabilizing, but we believe it is the United States who's destabilizing and its allies. As I said, we will never support groups that are destabilizing, but we believe that if you look at our region, the people with whom we work represent their own people, are members of their own parliaments, are important figures in their own communities, and they're not a destabilizing force. Had it not been for Hezbollah fighting ISIS in Lebanon and in Syria, we would have had a totally different situation. So we need to define destabilizing. The United States is destabilizing. The United States' presence in our region has been destabilizing. You don't need to listen to me for that. You take President Trump. I ask President Trump to simply listen to the tapes of his own debates, his own presidential debates, and see, he said in those debates that Iran is fighting ISIS, that the United States helped create ISIS. So I would simply agree with President Trump.
Two other things I want to ask you about. One is Syria. Why is Iran still supporting the Syrian regime, which has killed its own people, used chemical weapons on its own people?
We have said time and again that we are in Syria cooperating against ISIS. We do that in Syria, we do that in Iraq, we do that even in Iraqi Kurdistan. We have done it across the board. That is our objective. The decision about who should rule Syria is not ours, is not yours. That decision is solely a decision that should be made by the people of Syria. And we've been saying that. I said that 6 years ago. Let the people of Syria decide. But the United States wanted to determine that Bashar will not be running in the election. But if you believe that he is such a butcher that is killing his people, then why do you mind if he runs in an election? He would be voted out by the people. You should only make sure that you have a free and fair election. And that's what we've been calling for. But they want basically preconditions for an election. Now, I'm happy that they have set aside those preconditions. We're moving with Russia and with Turkey to establish a constitutional commission. We are very close to finalizing the constitutional commission. Then the people of Syria could sit together, draft their constitution, have their own election, and we can all facilitate that. You know, we cannot dictate for other countries. We have learned that dictation doesn't work. I think the United States needs to learn that too.
You believe Mr. Assad will allow a democratic process to go forward, free and fair elections in that country?
I think he will, and I think we all should help him.
You think the evidence of what he's done to his own people doesn't undermine that?
His own people will decide. It's not for us to decide. It's for his own people to decide. And I believe always, at the end of the day, people are the best judge.
But won't he be choosing who participates in the process?
We can make sure that the process is free and fair. That we said from the beginning, and we continue to say that. But unfortunately, people who had preconditions did not want to allow the people of Syria to make that decision. That's why we have a prolonged conflict.
Final question, Minister Zarif. Iran is now holding at least 6 Americans, detaining 6 Americans. Why is Iran holding them?
The United States is detaining many Iranians who have not committed any crime. The United States is pushing other countries to detain Iranians who have only violated U.S. sanctions. They never set foot in the United States, but they are held in Australia, in Germany, in France, in the United Kingdom, in Africa, in Asia. I called for a comprehensive exchange. Unfortunately, the United States is not prepared to do that. Iran showed its good faith by releasing one. The United States has not reciprocated. So I think the problem is in Washington, not in Tehran.
Are these individuals who are being detained, have they committed a crime? What have they done?
The individuals who are in Iran have been convicted by a court. The individuals who are waiting extradition to the United States, some of them lingering in prison for 2-3 years, have not been convicted by any court.
What will it take to win the release of these Americans?
Them. That's how I can get involved. Because I cannot get involved if it's just a one-sided situation, because our judiciary is independent and they will make their own decision. But if there is an exchange, then I can intervene.
How many Iranians are being held by the United States?
Much more than the number of dual nationals that are being held in Iran, probably several times.
Finally.
Most of them are university professors, including one whose case is now public in the United States. He is a leading figure in stem cell research, and he's being held in jail for 9 months, even without a pretrial.
Finally, if there's one simple message you want the American people to know from the government of Iran, what is it?
The government of Iran does not want conflict. The government of Iran does not. The people of Iran don't want confrontation. The people and government of Iran have nothing against American people. All we want is for nobody to intervene in our affairs. I think that's something that that American people could easily understand. The Americans did not want others to intervene in their affairs. That's why they had the American Revolution. We do not want others to intervene in our affairs. That's all.
Foreign Minister Javad Zarif, thank you very much.
Thank you.